So thanks all for being here. First of all, I value your time because I know that you can be in a lot of other places, virtually or physically. So I appreciate y'all being here today for sure. My name's Deb. I'm the founder of Find Calm Here, and we have conversations around finding calm in everyday life and using amazing strategies that our experts have to develop calming practices. And I know that we've had a couple of these events now, and we've talked a lot about different topics. So we have a pretty big diversity of topics with Find Calm here in our community. We haven't gone really in depth with that, and I wanted to make sure that I preferenced this whole conversation by saying, if you want to go deeper in any of the topics that we have, this topic or any other topics, the Find Calm Here community is now free and open to everyone to join. And that's basically to help you take these ideas that we have about organization, for example, and implement them into your life, and then help with the support of a community to help you be implementing these practices. Because it's one thing to learn something, and it's another thing to actually put it into practice. And that sometimes is helpful when you have a community supporting you. I know that a lot of these people are in a different community and they kind of get that, but not everybody has a supportive network around them. And that's why I created Find Calm Here, so that we can all support each other in our pursuit of finding calm. So welcome, Maria. We have a bunch of lovely people here, but we're going to start the Find Calm Here conversation with Laura. And Laura, so you want to tell us a little bit about what we're going to talk about, and maybe we can start with some questions and things like after you do an intro.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Souders. I'm a professional organizer. My business is called Healthier Spaces Organizing. I started it about 7 years ago. Before that time, I had been a school teacher for 18 years and really disliked being a school teacher for probably 17 of those years. I knew I needed a change, and I just didn't know how to do it or that it could even be possible. So for probably 17 years, every summer I'd say, I've got to quit. I've got to quit. And my poor husband had to listen to it all the time. But I really thought I was trapped forever, until I had a conversation with a girlfriend, and she said, why are you trapped? Why can't you quit? Why can't you change your life? And I realized after she said that, it started this ball rolling of that I had always been an organized person with my physical things, but a lot of the clutter I had in my life was in my head. It was actually what I was telling myself. So not all clutter, I realized, is physical clutter. Some of it is just stuff that we tell ourselves or stuff that we accumulate from other people, from society. And we let that dictate what we do in our lives or how we go about our lives. So 8 years ago, I decided I'm going to quit, I'm going to stop teaching, and I'm going to start my own business. So to do that, my husband had been a builder, and ironically, he had gone back to school because of the recession and with the housing market, and he was going to school to be a teacher. So he was very close to being done, but didn't have a job. And he said, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to pay our bills if you're starting a business and if I don't have a job? So we decided to sell our house. We had a new model home that we had lived in for a couple of years. We decided to sell it and downsize. Well, the house we found to downsize that seemed to be perfect, it fit our budget, and I knew we could redo anything. It was actually a hoarded house. And I decided that I didn't want them to clear it out and throw things into a dumpster. So we bought a hoarded house, contents and all, as is. So that is the house. We went from a 3,000 square foot brand new house to a 1920s hoarded house that had rooms where the ceiling was caving down. We had 3 rooms where you couldn't even walk through them. And we decided that we were going to make that our house. And that's what we did. So I started on this journey of I wanted to clear that clutter, all of the stuff that had been hoarded in that house, and make sure it went to either charity, it was sold, or it was recycled. I wanted something good to come from all the stuff that was in there. And by going through that, I kind of sorted through the physical stuff, and that was the beginning of my career. And then I was also sorting through my mental stuff of what can I make my life, what can I do with my life, what can I create? And I saw so many parallels in what people are telling themselves and how they react to situations in their own life and are not really taking charge and creating it. And also how they feel with their physical stuff in their space, how they feel like that they're stuck, they're trapped in that environment, or they're stuck with that situation and it will never change. So I really see a lot of connection between the two. So that's where I've been coming into this community. And Deb and I met about 6 or 7 years ago. And when I had kind of just started my business and just getting things moving. But I feel like it's more of a mindset of not necessarily minimalism, but working with the things that you want and the things you need and choosing what's in your life so that you're keeping only the things that are really important to you.
Thanks, Laura. I really appreciate you sharing that. I think a lot of us can relate to a lot of the feelings, especially when you're thinking about hoarding. That just makes me feel anxious already. So I can relate to that. Did we decide on a question, or do you want to just see what people's questions are?
It's up to you. It's up to you guys. If you want me to talk about the process a little bit of what I do with people, or if people have questions already, that's fine. Either way.
Well, I think it would be good to just start with maybe a question to everyone that we could take a moment just to think about mindfully, like, is there a physical space or a virtual digital space like your inbox, or if a physical space in your house that you can think of that immediately comes to mind when we're talking about this topic? Or is it something where you feel like your mindset is the cluttered part, like inside? Maybe we could talk about that. I feel like that might be a good place to start. Does anybody have any immediate feelings about that coming to mind right now? I see Isaac might want to say something, or Maria.
Hey, not really anything jumping out straight away, but I am curious to hear about the process that you use, Laura, and what you actually do with people. Maybe you could tell us a bit more.
Sure. I do a 4-step process in organizing with clients. I start with coming up with a goal for their space. Usually I ask them, what bothers you about the space? How do you feel? Most of what I'm doing is physical organizing, but how do you feel when you walk into the room? How do you feel or what do you feel like you can't do in the room that you want to do now? I really get them to feel it, because I realized when a lot of people would come to me in the beginning, I would ask them what their goal for the room was, or what they wanted the organization to, what problem they wanted it to solve. And they would say, oh, I just want it organized. I just want it organized. And I said, when you say, I just want it organized, what does that mean? Because for everyone, it's so different. In some people's home, on their countertops in their kitchen, they don't want a toaster. They don't want a coffee pot. They want nothing. Other people want picture frames. They want cute little, decorative ceramic things. Everybody is so different, and their level of clutter tolerance is different. So I'll say to people, how do you want to feel? And a lot of times it's a little bit of a struggle in the beginning for them to really articulate what they want to happen. And I feel like it's because the clutter has clouded their vision so much. They can't really see. Now, in a kitchen, you kind of have some goals, maybe like I want to cook more, I want to cook healthier, or I want to sit down for a family dinner together or eat at our table. That may be some of the goals. But in another room, where it was maybe just a junk room, people will say, I don't know, I just want it organized. And I'll say, would you want to do anything in here? And they kind of feel like that's not even possible. They can't go that far to think that it'd be possible to make this room into something that could be usable. So as we start to clear clutter, I keep asking them questions about it, like, okay, you talked about you love scrapbooking, or you like to do needlepoint, or you want a quiet reading room. What about this becoming that room? So as things clear away, they start to come up with new ideas, or kind of can envision what they want. So that's our starting place. And then I can go to the next step, which is purging. And that's where a lot of people say, oh, I don't like this. I don't like to get rid of things. And I'm not like what you see on some of the hoarding shows. I'm not telling people, you have to get rid of that. It's not like The Biggest Loser, I'm screaming in their face. I don't make anybody get rid of anything. They have to choose what they want. But through questioning, thoughtful questioning of, why do you want to keep this, or when do you use this? I'm just asking them so I can help them to store it efficiently and functionally. It kind of plants a seed in their mind of what they want to do with the thing, or actually if it is important. Many of the things, like if we go through our books, for instance, I'll say to people, here you have this bookshelf full of cookbooks. Are these all cookbooks you want to keep? And when they look at the cookbooks at first, they say, yep, I like to cook a lot. I want all of those cookbooks. And when I ask them individually about each cookbook, let's just choose each one. So let's look at the titles and say, this is actually something I want to use. They start looking at them and they say, oh, this is microwave cooking. No, I don't want that. Oh, this is low fat cooking. I don't want that. Oh, this is Atkins. And all these start to go. And the reason that is because we keep a lot of things that we see because we're used to seeing them. They're familiar in our space. So I ask them to really look at it. Is it just something you use? Is it something you need? Is it something that really is part of the life you want to create, or that goal you want to create? Because every little bit of space can be used for something. So if we choose what we want to keep, then there'll be space for all of those things. If we just let things that have been there stay there, it's kind of like not pruning a tree. It really caves out and stops some of the other areas from growing and from having enough space. So we purge, we go through the things and purge and get rid of the things they don't want. And then the third step is conscious placement. We make sure that what they're needing to use in a space is very convenient, it's very close and accessible. And the things that they don't use as often are moved out of the way and a little bit harder to get to or further away. Things that are only used very infrequently. And at this stage, then we are ready for a maintenance, where we want it to be functional and we want to be able to maintain the space. So this is where I would introduce any organizing containers or different things that would make it stay more functional. Like if it was in a kitchen and we had lots of little sauce packets or bags of rice, I would get a container to put them in so they're not always falling over and you can slide it out easier. So that would help to maintain it. So I use containers at that stage. And then also we have them set up rules or boundaries for how much of that can be kept. So if we're talking about magazines, some people keep a lot of magazines, and I'll say, let's set a limit. Is the limit going to be 2 months worth of magazines that you'll keep? And then when the third month comes, you have to get rid of some? Or is the limit going to be enough that fill, a magazine rack or something? The same thing with shoes. If this is how many shoes you have room for, let's make that our limit. Let's make that our boundary. So if you're going to choose to buy another pair of shoes, then before you make that purchase, you need to decide which pair of shoes is going to be leaving, because there's not space. And if we keep exceeding our space, then we go into another area. We take away from something else. So those are the ways that I help people to come up with their goals, to purge, to place the things so that they're functional, and then to maintain the space so that they can keep it going. One of the biggest things I noticed in purging too, and throughout my process, I'm right next to my clients the whole time, working one-on-one, but like I said, I'm asking them questions and having them make the decisions. But what I noticed is many people really know what they want to do with stuff deep down inside. They feel it in their gut, but they feel guilty about especially letting go of things. So when I asked them, what do you think about this canister set in the kitchen? What do you think about this flour, sugar? You know, it doesn't have anything in it. You had it up in a cabinet. What do you think about that? Do you want to use it, or is it not something you're interested in anymore? And I hear sounds a lot of times that people make. They'll go, oh. And you can hear this heaviness, this weight. And that's what I feel in the beginning of the process, the weight of the stuff that it has on them, because they'll tell me a story about, well, my mother-in-law gave that to me and it's not my style, but I feel guilty getting rid of it. Or, you know, somebody thought I would like it and it isn't, you know, what I wanted, but how can I just donate it? What can I do with it? So I help to give them permission to let go of things, because we can't be required to keep everything people give to us. And if we are, then it's not really our space anymore. So I give them the permission to let go, and also the resources to donate it to charities or to sell it or to do something useful with it, that it doesn't go to a landfill. Because with our hoarded house, nothing went to the landfill. I refused to get a dumpster for our house. I tried to recycle, sell, and donate everything so that it would be used some way in our community or by somebody else. So those are the steps I kind of go through with people to help them to identify it themselves, because I guess as a former teacher, I want to teach them the process and I want them to be able to do it themselves. And it's really amazing how often people don't recognize that first signal of purging on their own, that they really don't want something and they're only keeping it out of guilt. I feel like that's something I really bring to light. And that's something I can teach to people so that as they're going through, they know why they're keeping something, if it's out of guilt or if it's something that they really want to keep. Does anybody have any questions about the process or from what they've heard? Not so much. So one of the things I noticed, a lot of people, I said they have guilt about getting rid of something. And I work with a lot of older clients too, many who are downsizing. Some are moving from their single family home that they've lived in for 50 or 60 years. Some even from their childhood home that they've lived in longer than that, or it was their parents' home and their parents and grandparents lived in it. Many of them grew up during the Depression and have a very strong feeling towards keeping things. And one of the things I help them to see is that keeping something, they've been taught that it's less wasteful to keep something. If you already have it, don't waste it. You keep it for you because you never know when you might need it. But what ends up happening is they keep things that they have no idea when they might be able to use them. And then the things that they really want to use, they can't find. And they end up repurchasing other things, the same thing twice. Things end up going, like in the kitchen, food gets expired, things go bad. And so they're actually spending more money by saving too much than they are, keeping it, if they would let it go. I had a client who she was in her late 80s, and she had some really good business suits. She had been one of few women that went to college when she was younger and had a corporate kind of job. And she wore Pendleton suits, and she spent a lot of money on them, and they're very quality suits. And she was telling me how they've been in her attic for years now. And she said, but I paid good money for those suits. Now she's never going to work in an office situation again. She hasn't used the suits in 20 years. I don't even think she can fit into the suits by what she told me. But she said, but I'm not going to be wasteful and just get rid of them. And I brought to her attention that maybe it's not wasteful donating them to someone who could use them, as wasteful as it is letting them go to rot and no one can use them forever now. So I help people to kind of change their mindsets about their things, because they've been taught some of these things like, I'm wasteful if I buy it and then I don't use it. So then they feel guilty and they keep it. So I kind of show them, is it more wasteful to keep it and it's kind of like selfish to keep it, to hold on to it, or is it better to let it go? And through what I've been working with myself and with my clients, there is so much to be said for letting go of things that don't serve you. And whether it's the clothing, whether it's, you have bought several bags of quinoa and you hate them and you got them at Sam's Club or some big, discount store, donating that to a pantry, getting rid of that kind of stuff that's not serving you. There's a really well-known organizing guru, Peter Walsh. He was on several times on Oprah's show, and he has a book called "Does This Clutter Make My Butt Look Fat?" He's a pretty funny guy, but he says that when you donate this stuff, you get karmic cash. So something else comes into your life that you don't know what it is that you actually need when you get rid of those things that you don't need. And I noticed this in my own life with my children. I would have them donate their clothing all the time and give it to people we knew or didn't know, just to move it along. And then out of the clear blue, someone I never knew either had children, someone I worked with, or had children older than mine, would say, "Hey, we have this whole big bag of clothes that, your kids could use, I think. Do you want them?" Some of them still had tags on them, different things. And some of the clothes that I got rid of that my kids said they wouldn't wear, it was things that had been bought for them that still had tags on them too. So it was hard to get rid of, saying your grandmother spent money on this or I spent money on this, but I knew they wouldn't wear it or it didn't work for them. So when I got rid of it and released it, very soon after, other things would come in and took their place that we could actually use. So it was a good thing for me to see in my own life, and then to show people how that worked. Things that really were important to them, were able to place more value on, and the things that they could use would make their way into their lives. And I noticed it, like I said, not only with the clutter, but when I decided I was quitting my job, I kind of did a whole life purge. I didn't get rid of my husband or my family or anything, but I did get rid of our house that was big, and I didn't really feel the need to have a big house, so we downsized. I looked at all my relationships. I looked at everything to evaluate what was really working and what was I just keeping because it was so familiar and it was comfortable. But when I stood back and took a look at, hey, if I'm quitting my job and I'm doing all these other changes, I might as well look at everything. There were a lot of things that didn't serve me anymore, and they were weighing me down. They were friendships that really were one-sided or had kind of, gone their way. And it really helped me to clear a lot of the mental clutter that had been in my head.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura, for sharing that. We had a question in the chat here that Mia was saying, I'm living at my parents' home during the pandemic, and their home is much more cluttered than I would keep my own home. How do you think, how do you encourage others to declutter or calm your mind while you're living in a cluttered situation that you can't control? Mia, I don't know if you wanted to I know you're not on video, but I don't know if you wanted to just speak to more of that. You're happy to unmute yourself and go into any more detail if you'd like. But I guess, Laura, you could kind of go into that a little bit if you have any feedback there.
Sure. Like I said, there's a different threshold for clutter for everyone. So Mia's in-laws may have a different threshold for clutter and it doesn't bother them. They may not even notice it. That may be comfortable for them. But I've found it's very hard for family and even sometimes friends to help each other to declutter or downsize. I work for a lot of families. People who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s will hire me for their parents because they've tried to help their parents to declutter and to downsize. And they know at some point that it's going to be their job and they will have to clear out their parents' home. And maybe it means their parents are going to assisted living or a senior living community and they need to make those arrangements. But it is very hard, Mia, I'm sorry to say, to have you help, because they want you to see them in a certain light. Family wants you to see them in a certain light, and friends even want you to see them in a certain light. And so it's hard for them to take this role as needing help sometimes, or as being not capable of doing something on their own. So some people, it would feel like if you said to them, boy, your house is really dirty, can I help you clean it up? That's how they would feel, that it was some sort of an assault or an attack on their housekeeping, rather than how they are keeping too many things. I always say to people, it's easier for someone who doesn't know them at all to kind of come in and say it. If they had a conversation about that they wanted to get rid of things, and if they started that conversation or said anything about downsizing, that's where you might be able to interject a little bit. But I find that people, especially older people who have grown up in the Depression or shortly after that, they really are able to let go of things when they know someone else can. So it's finding that group that you can donate things to, a charity that's in their town or that they are involved with, that really will help them to let go of things, because our older population is often so generous and they really want something good to happen to it. They don't realize sometimes how many places there are that are in need. I take things to animal shelters many times, and they may be old towels, and people say, just throw that in the trash, just throw that in the trash. And I'll say, well, can I take it to an animal shelter? I'll say, oh, if they need them, here, I have so many old towels. And they'll quickly get rid of things that they know they don't need, but they don't want things to go to waste. You know, they're only willing to let go of a little bit when they think it's going to trash. But when it's going somewhere that's going to make a difference in someone's life, then they're willing to let go. So that would be the only thing, kind of letting them know about the charities may be a little helpful.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it's more of a situation, well, now that I'm back in my childhood home, I see things from childhood that are still here.
Yeah.
And I think it's just not a problem for them, but it works my nerves. And I do worry about them getting older. And also you touched on having to eventually clean out the house, but it becomes sort of a safety issue for me too, because there's things everywhere in the paths of the home and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm hopefully only here temporarily, and it's not my home, so I can't go through like I would like. So I appreciate those suggestions. So, and I think it is helpful to think of someone that's objective to come in and maybe suggest some things. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially if there's been any times where you've tried to help them before, and if they've been resistant to it, then there's already a past battle. So they feel like they have to say, you know, they're defensive already at the beginning of it. So I would say too, to maybe talk about maybe somebody coming in and say, for safety, we just want you to stay in your home as long as you can. And that is something that helps them. Decluttering and downsizing what they have will help them to stay in their home as long as possible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Stephanie had one. Stephanie, did you want to go in depth more a little bit on your question here?
Sure. Hey, Laura.
Hi.
I'm actually in the process of decluttering my room as well. And I asked, do you have tips on disposing like hair and beauty products that I used to use or I've tried but don't like because they're like still almost new? And I feel bad throwing them out, but I don't know if like, can I donate those? Will people still accept them? Like, I feel like it's okay just to throw them out, I guess.
So one thing you can do, I try to do whatever's kind of easiest that will get things to someone else. So if they haven't been open, let's say you have 2 bottles of the same thing, and you tried one and one's not open, you can donate them many times to either shelters, women's shelters, or food pantries, and places where people get food often have personal care areas too. So they'll take other things. But the other thing is, if they're open, most places won't take them. But one thing you could do is even put it on Facebook or to your friends, because there's so many people that you know who do the same thing probably you do. And I've done this with my friends with, we had a jewelry swap, that we would say, hey, here's all the jewelry I have. Is anybody interested in this? It's not anything I wear. And people were so excited to say, oh my God, I love that. So friends that you may have that, or people that you know that you can even put pictures and say, hey, does anybody want this? Just partially tried and whatever, because they know you, they'd probably say, oh, I'd love to try that, and maybe they just want to try
Okay.
it. So that would be another way to pass it along to someone else.
Thank
Can I
you.
make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Sure.
Can I make a suggestion?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to figure out who's talking.
Mia.
Sure.
So I've done a similar thing too with hair products. I've gone through a lot of hair products. So just with your circle of girlfriends, I don't know how much you're socializing now because of the pandemic, but maybe you can have I would like to say post-pandemic party or later in the pandemic party or something like that, and just do a product swap so everybody can bring everything. And what you do is what we did was you just sit around in a circle, and then you each go around in the circle and pick something that you would like, and you do one item at a time so that everybody doesn't get all the good stuff, but that's a way it's within your circle, so it's probably like a girlfriend anyway that you'd borrow shampoo from if you were visiting her or something like that, so that you don't have to worry as much technically. And I think as far as the pandemic goes, as long as you leave it sitting for a while, then usually coronavirus doesn't stay on surfaces of things that long. So that's something to consider too.
That's a great idea. That's how we did our jewelry swap. We did the same thing. We put all the jewelry and we just kept going around and you got to pick something. But I know friends who have done the same thing with home wares. Like they'll say, I don't use this type of tea towels anymore. I changed my colors, or these pictures. We've done it with books, like novels we've read. We just put it in, everybody keeps going around and taking it. But that's a great idea to do it with your friends and just bring it all there, and have it all there and let them choose. And Deb had said to the group that maybe even a social distance circle, you can even have it outside. That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Mia, for the suggestion. That was great. Stephanie, hopefully that helped you to get some of your unused items out in the world. Carolyn said she had a question about keeping things that I use a lot organized. So Laura was talking a little bit about having things more accessible. Is that what you were asking about, Carolyn?
I don't know so well. I guess it's a mix of having it more accessible when I need it and tucked away neatly when I don't. Like things, so I live in a 2-story and I'll use things downstairs and I'll need them upstairs and I'm constantly going up and down and up and down and up and down. And like the things that I use a lot, like in the home and then when I leave into the car, things that pile up near the door. And I've got containers to put stuff in, but inevitably things just get scattered and I don't know. How would you approach that? Just like keeping those things, the chargers, the sunglasses, like a hat. I've got a place for my keys and that's about it. Gum, things like that.
So what I try to do is have what I call a staging area for things. So when you come in at the ends of the day, you kind of need a staging area to put your stuff down. And whether it's an adult or you're doing it for children who are coming home from school, you need a spot to put your purse, like you said, keys, things like that, and things that you're going to be taking out again. So sometimes I'll get a bench that has, storage inside it. So you can put your purse in there so it's close to the door, or even a small cube that has storage inside it could be kind of even placed close to the door, so that those sunglasses, those things you need when you're walking out the door, are right there. As far as charging cords, I know sometimes people will be running upstairs to get a charging cord to take to their car. And then they'll want that charging cord inside, and then they'll go out to their car and get it. Instead, most of the charging cords aren't that much. I just get a charging cord that you keep in your car, one that you keep upstairs, one that you keep, so that if you don't have to do as much. Same thing like with the gum, you know what I mean? Having some, you know, downstairs, maybe have some upstairs, and trying to keep like different staging areas so that you have what you need in that area and don't have to do a whole lot of running around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Priscilla had a question about further expanding on decluttering your mind. Tips or tricks or any suggestions that you have in regards to that?
Yeah, what I noticed too, I said the combination of the two, that sometimes a lot of times my clients who have cluttered areas, they are so overwhelmed with the clutter that it's distracting, and they can't see some visions, not only for the room, but even for their life. You know, sometimes as we clear clutter away, they'll say, you know what, we'll be working on a kitchen or we'll be working on a living room. They'll say, you know what, I think I'm going to go back to school. I think I'm going to do this. And now all of a sudden their options have just opened up. When you clear physical clutter, it also opens up space, just not only physically, but in yourself, your mind. Just think about if you're starting a new job and you want to get ready for that new job. Or I always felt like before I started the first day of school, even when I was a teacher, I would kind of clean up before I did that. It makes it so that you're ready to approach that new endeavor. So getting rid of, clearing clutter not only clears the space, but it actually, like if you've heard of feng shui, it's clearing energy. So it's moving energy and creating more space for that energy to move a little faster. Clutter slows down that energy movement. So it's making more space for that to come into your life. And then really starting to look at what is working for you. It's hard to do, to look at what's working for you, but I just went through all different like areas of my life and just thought about like my relationships. And I thought about my husband and what's working with my children and our relationships, what needs to change. Really the same things that we talk about as the goal for the space. What's bothering you with this? What if I could snap my fingers to change it, what would change? How would things be different? So we made a lot of changes in our marriage too when we made this switch. You know, I mean, we sold our house, I quit my job, and he didn't even have a job yet. So at one time we had 2 houses and no secure, permanent, stable job. So that can give you a lot of headaches and a lot of stress, but it also makes you live in the moment because we couldn't think too far ahead. But we were evaluating and enjoying what we were doing. And we knew that the end goal was for us to be creating a life that we both wanted to maintain and to love. You know, we wanted it to be our life, not just something that fell into our laps that we kept going and it was kind of like, it was okay. We wanted it to be good and enjoy it. So many times what I say is if you start looking around, start really analyzing, thinking about it from someone else's point of view, your house, if you look at it physically, if you walk in your door, really look around at the things, because ask yourself, is that really what I want hanging on that wall? Is that still what I'm interested in? Does that still speak to me? Or has it just been there for 15 years and I'm letting it stay? You know, the same thing with the friendships. Is this really a friend that's here for me and doing things? Or is this somebody who's just been in my life and I've kept it going? So kind of questioning those things is how I went about it. And it really was so helpful to look at things like that. And not having, like with the physical stuff that we let go of, there's nothing wrong with letting go of the canisters that are no longer your style, or the jewelry that you just don't wear. There's nothing wrong with letting go of it and passing it along to someone else. And the same thing with a friendship. There's ways, you know, that you can let go of friendships or kind of let them kind of drift apart, that they're not really, you know, you're letting that person also kind of go on if it's not working for you. You have to think of everything that you're keeping in your life, whether it's the things or the friendships, they take up your time and energy. So think about if if those friendships and those things that you're keeping are really what you want your time and energy to go to, because slowly each little thing you keep takes a little more energy from you.
So,
I'm not looking at the chat at all, Deb. So you tell me about, I can't look at the chat and people. So you tell me if there's more questions or anything too.
oh no, Priscilla, I think she was gonna just respond to your.
Oh, I was gonna say thank you. I appreciate it. It was very helpful.
Sure, sure.
Good. I'm glad, Priscilla. Thanks for being here and asking the question, because I think above all, I mean, that's the big deal. Being able to clear your minds and being able to walk out into the world. That's what Find Calm Here is all about, is really being able to walk out into the world calmer. And sometimes you think, I just realized today, and I keep realizing that there's things that are for me, and even though they don't seem like they're for me, and I have to let it go. I had to let go of a corporate job because it was not serving me. It was definitely paying my bills, but it mentally was exhausting and making me feel ridiculously horrible. And it's the best thing I ever did, even though now life is upside down in a lot of ways for all of us. It's still things that I was just thinking when, Laura, you were talking about letting go of jobs. And even if they bring you income, but they're not serving you in other ways, and you're not having intentional and positive responses from that, and it's not something meaningful and that you don't care about, then why do it? Like, I mean, if it's literally serving a purpose of paying the bills and that's all it is, then that's one thing, and you can do that for so long. Mm-hmm. But eventually we all get to that point of like, what's the bigger picture? What's my purpose? What do I really want to do with my life? And you don't know how long, not to get all dark and deep on us, but we don't know how long we're going to be here. So, and that just brings it back to what you're saying about all of this conversation really gets us to thinking about being present in each day and being mindful about what we bring into our life, whether it's a physical thing or whether it's something that isn't a physical thing. So thanks for bringing that point to us, Priscilla. I like Carolyn's response, life is more than bills. I love that. I wanted to just point out in the chat up earlier, there was a conversation that Beth had asked a question about where to donate during COVID. And I did find on the community aid website that they are taking no contact donations during the day, during the week. In the Harrisburg area, I know not all of you guys are in Pennsylvania, so I'm not sure locally where you are, what you have, but that was just a basic Google search that I had done that you might be able to find near you if you are trying to get rid of some things during this time. So I don't know if there's any other resources you had around that. And, also, there was another comment about trophies. Heather had commented about trophies. So I found a website for trophies that you might want to check to send in, Heather, but I didn't know if those two things, Laura, if there's any other comments or things that you've noticed recently during COVID that that you've experienced or found helpful.
Yeah, I'm in the Harrisburg area, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and everything has pretty much started to reopen as far as donations. But it's now contactless. So they put out a big cart and you just put your stuff in there and they take it in. So it's really the same. It's the same drop off. But with trophies, I have taken them to awards places that do trophies, and they've been able to, we've taken boxes and boxes to them, and they're able to take parts of it and recycle it and reuse it, but not everything. But I felt like that was the best that I could get. Some trophies, if they're kind of silly and old, I've donated them to like community aid or Salvation Army, because other people will get a little plaque on them for something for a friend. So they might do it for a joke. So I've seen them go there. So most trophies too have just this little piece that's on them that you just get a little butter knife and you pop off who it's to, the personalization on it. So you can pop it off and then someone else can put something on it. So I've seen like big bowling trophies, and some just look really silly, you know, some of the older trophies. So it'd be kind of fun to do that. But yeah, I think just calling any place that you're thinking of donating to to find out how they've changed, because from week to week, I do notice they have different regulations, different things that they're saying or different things that they're taking. I think part of that has to do, especially in this area, with how many people are starting to look around their house and declutter and want to do that spring cleanup. So they're getting these massive amounts of stuff. So I think some of it has to do with not so much really spreading the virus anymore, as they can't take all of it anymore. So it's a little bit of a backlog they're having because they weren't selling for so long. So, and people have just been cleaning out and cleaning out. But Deb, I wanted to say the same thing when you were talking about quitting your job. I spent, I think, 17 years trying to talk myself into being a teacher. And there's nothing wrong with being a teacher. My parents were both educators. My dad was my high school principal for my whole 4 years. My mom was a kindergarten teacher in my district. My aunt and uncles are both teachers, one on each side. And so I grew up around education, but I was kind of trying to talk myself into being a teacher. Like, what's wrong with it? Why don't I like it? I have summers off, you know, I get paid, I get benefits. I don't have to worry about my job. It's stable. So when I've thought about this afterwards, and when, you know, I think about things that people kind of feel guilty about letting go of. I felt guilty about letting go of being a teacher because it was such a good profession and such an honorable and noble profession. And I shouldn't dislike it. I kind of think of shows like, and I tell people like The Bachelor. So for The Bachelor, you know, only the people who they feel like are going to be a connection get a rose. And it's not that the other people aren't good or nice people or there's anything wrong. It's just not the person for them. And that's what I said. Teaching isn't bad. It's not wrong. It's not, you know, there's nothing bad about it. It just wasn't for me. And many times I make it into kind of a joke when people are letting go of some of their stuff. They'll say, I don't think I want this sweater, or I don't think I should keep it. And I'll say, okay, it doesn't make it to the next rose ceremony. It doesn't get a rose. Let's donate it or move it along, you know. So we try to make light of, okay, it's not coming with us to the next ceremony or to the next step. It's just not one of them. But people feel bad, but it's just like when you're dating, you know, it's everybody's not right for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not right for you at that time in your life. So we have to let go of some of that guilt, whether it's with our job or the friendships and stuff or the stuff. It's just not right for us.
Yeah. It's really powerful. And there's just like, wow, there's just so much we could go into, right? All these little pockets of conversation about how we've gotten to talking about organizing your house, your home, you know, if you're at your home or if you're somewhere else. I know I was living with my mother who's on this call, and I did a decluttering a couple years ago, and it was then that I was able to start saying, okay, what do I really want with my life? Because then you have to ask the hard questions, because all of that stuff can also be like a block. It seemed like for me, it was like, oh, well, there's all these things. So I wasn't asking the questions. So I think then now I can go, and that's what you're talking about there, is then asking more questions. What do I really want to do? And how do I want to be in the world? And what do I want to come home to? When I did my space, I moved into an apartment about a year ago here in Harrisburg, and there was nothing in this apartment. I had no furniture. I had nothing. I was sitting on the floor on a pillow for like 2 months, 3 months. I think I got my couch in September. I moved in June. But like I had no furniture. I had an interior designer I worked with, and she did a mood board for me based on my responses to questions. And then I thought, how do I want to feel when I come home? And how do I want other people to feel when they come to my home? And that was all about feeling calm. That was the main word that came up, was I want to feel calm because I have an anxious, stressful workplace. And the last thing I want to do is feel anxious and stressful when I come home. I also wanted to incorporate things that I cared a lot about. I incorporated paintings that my friends have done. I incorporated things that, books and things that mean something to me, pictures and the map of places I want to travel. So all of those things, even when you're talking about getting rid of things, and then when you're talking about incorporating the new things, or keep what you're going to keep and why that's important to you, and asking those questions, I think is all a part of it. So appreciate your time, Laura, and appreciate everybody for giving so much great positive, suggestions and comments in the chat bar. If you do want to save the chat, you can actually press the 3 dots and you will be able to save the chat for the resources. I am going to put up a summary and in the replay, and I'll post the replay in the Facebook events page and also in our Find Calm Here community. The replay will be as well. It'll be on the YouTube channel on VMO, Venmo, however you say that. And I know there was a couple people who didn't talk. Was there anybody who had any last questions for Laura or comments, anything you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I want to chime in and tap into this tangent subject with decluttering, the overlap with minimalism.
Mhm.
And say, for example, here's a choice, right? There's 2 suits, waist 30, I'm 32, not the highest of quality in terms of, so I want to replace those with, let's say, like a Bluff Works Gramercy suit because it fits my travel lifestyle. Is one suit does it all together or separate? But how can this, okay, or that idea of, let's say, replacing several things with one high quality item that's long lasting and meets your ethos can play in this decluttering or, you know, redesigning of your space?
So you're actually choosing one thing. You're choosing that new suit that fits you, that will be useful to you, and will create less space. And if you donate then those 2 suits, or maybe if they're still in good condition, there's sometimes men's consignment stores, or even Dress for Success that you can donate them to. So you're getting rid of those 2 that really don't work for you right now. And you're kind of downsizing and your choices, and you're also getting rid of that. So whenever you're purging, it doesn't have to be that you're not getting something new. You can get something, sometimes in the purging process, that's where you find, you know what I actually need is this. This is what's missing. So that's a good time to say, you know, I'm going to get rid of these, and this is what I'm going to choose to keep, because that's what that's what you value. So that's a great idea to do that.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks, Laura. I don't know if their Dress for Success is nationwide. I know Isaac is in California, so I'm not quite sure if they have that over in California, but I'm sure you can find something similar to, or donate to other places that would take those suits for sure. Thanks everybody for being on the call. Next week, we're going to be talking about Find Calm with intuition. So kind of related to this topic, because Laura's talking a little bit about tapping into the intuition by asking those questions and then being meaningful about what you let go and then what you keep, right? And in that vein, we're also going to be talking about intuition and how to identify what that means. What it means to be, if you can tap into your intuition, is that even possible? I don't know, because I'm not the expert, but Vanessa is. So she will talk to you more about that then. I appreciate your time. If you guys just want to kind of wave and say bye as we exit out of this call. If you're on the call, thank you for joining us. People that weren't able to be on video, I appreciate your time in just listening to our conversation. If you have questions, the Find Calm Here community, it's just findcalmhere.com. You can go on that website. You can see the events that are coming up, and you can also click the join button if you're not already in the community, and that'll take you right here to the inside of the Find Calm community. You set up a profile, and I'll introduce and wave to you as you come in the Find Calm Here community. With that, I think we're just about finished. So I appreciate everybody's time. I thought it was a good topic. So hopefully everybody enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Good to see everyone.
Bye.
Okay.